A couple of years ago, I had done a video on the one-stick climbing method and ended up taking it down just because there were some safety things I wasn't totally happy with and how I did that video. But I want to revisit it in this video today in combination with rappelling back down the tree. So basically, on my body right now, I have all the equipment that I would need to do this. And then just a quick disclaimer, climbing trees is inherently a dangerous activity. You could risk, serious injury or death by taking a fall. So anytime you're taking any kind of online advice, whether it's mine or anybody else's, if you're modifying your gear, you're taking on a little bit of extra risk. So please do it at your own risk. Use some common sense, and then go ahead and seek training and expert opinion whenever you can. This is a Mystery Ranch pop-up 28 pack that is a little bit overkill for most saddle hunting things unless you're also carrying a lot of extra gear, camera equipment, things like that, or if you really want to be able to use the load shelf capabilities for packing out a deer. I have the Bow Slinger Pro attached to my bow, which is carrying it on the pack. And then in the load shelf of the pack, I have my platform, as well as the single stick that I'm going to be using for this video. And I'm using the tethered Phantom saddle. On one side of my saddle, I have my lineman's rope, an accessory strap for hanging my bow and pack, and a recliner for comfort. And I'll have these things stuffed into this pouch, kind of in the order that I would use them. Also note too that I have my lineman's rope attached to the right side of my saddle because I'm left-handed. So when I'm using the ascender to tighten, it's very convenient. If you're a right-handed person, I would usually attach the lineman's rope to the left side of the saddle so that when you're tightening it with one hand, you're using your strong hand. And then on the left side of the saddle, I have a little bit bigger dump pouch here, and this one's covered in stealth strips. On the inside, I have a Doyle's gear hoist, and I just punched a little grommet and then covered that in stealth strips so that I can basically have this retractable gear hoist able to just pull right out from the bottom there. And then inside the pouch, I have my tether / rappelling setup, which is 40 feet of this Sterling CIV. It's a 9mm rope. I have a Mad Rock Safeguard with a rock climbing carabiner. And then on the end here, I have a quick link. It's kind of like a carabiner, but in order to close it, you basically just screw it closed like that, which takes a lot longer than a carabiner, but this is made of steel. It's got a nice circular cross section. I'll explain why that might be important in a little bit. And then I just have a little bitty Night Eyes gear tie connected here. Again, I'll show when I climb where that becomes important. So when I get to the tree, by this point I'm in stealth mode. I like to just slowly lay out all my stuff, lay out the stick, lay out the platform, lay out my bow, lay out my pack, and then get ready to climb. For my platform, I like to just hang that off of a little hook in the center of the back of my saddle. And then I'll connect my bow to the Doyle's gear hoist. And now for the climbing stick, the way my aider is set up, this is a 3-step aider, and each step is about 14-inch spacing. So that allows me to, just like with my normal climbing sticks, get the top of the first step at about 8 feet to start everything off. This climbing stick is pretty custom. These I don't think are available yet, but they kind of act like little mini platforms because it's got a nice wide base to stand on. The stick is shorter. I've got a rope cleat on the stick with some 6mm line. I'll have a link to this down in the description below. And then I also 3D printed this little rope grab for the top of it. You'll see how I use that in just a second. I'll start by just flipping this thing up about as high as I can go on the tree and lock it in the cleat. And usually with the tag end of the cleat here, to make sure it doesn't pop out, you would tie a little half hitch here. This is where, for me, that little 3D printed clip comes in handy. I can just pop it right in the clip, and then that helps prevent that rope from popping out. And then once I get the hunting height, I'll go ahead and do the half hitches to lock it in place. Next, I'll pull the tether system out. I'll toss this around the tree. Because there's a little bit less friction here than you'd have with just like a girth hitch of that rope, if you get slack on this line, there's a tendency for this to want to start falling down the tree. So I added this little Night Eyes gear tie here, so you can just give a quick wrap around where that rope comes out of the quick link, and that helps hold that in place. So I'll go ahead and attach myself into this tether system here. It's be a little bit awkward, this camera in place, but hopefully it helps you guys out. Now, one thing with this one stick method that is a trap that you don't want to try and fall into is if you climb up above your tether like this, see how much slack that's putting in the system? If this stick were to kick out at this point, that's a huge shock load that you're putting on yourself and your equipment. So as much as possible, it's a good idea to try and move the tether up with you as you go. I also find that sometimes it can be challenging to try and climb and move the tether up as you go, especially depending on what kind of aider you're using, or if you're climbing like a much bigger tree or something like that. So I find that if I just take that lineman's rope out and use it to ascend the stick and then move things, it tends to make life overall a little bit easier for me in general. I can put that rope up about as high as I want to go, and that'll be plenty. And then I can just go ahead and adjust the amount of slack that I have in that device. If you're just climbing up above the tether and you're just then standing on the stick and moving the whole thing up and just continuing to go without the lineman's rope, it's much easier in general, it's a lot faster, but just know that you are putting yourself at a little bit of risk if you put a lot of slack in that tether at any given time. So now I just have the weight back in my tether, and I can just take my weight off the stick, and I can go ahead, just pop the rope out of that cleat, pop the stick up, pull it out, and then I can move this whole stick up the tree. And what I like to do at this point too is I like to put the stick underneath my tether. So I'll stand out from the tree just a little bit here, and I'll slip the stick right underneath. And now just the tension on that tether will hold that stick in place. One thing you'll definitely want to make sure of though is that the front face or the front corner of that climbing stick is nice and filed down smooth. You definitely don't want any sharp edges touching that rope at all. And all the time that I'm doing this, I'm basically just sitting in the saddle, so it's pretty comfortable. It's not really strenuous or taxing by any means. And if you look at the distance that I made in that move, on average, I found for me it's about 4 to 5 feet. So if my stick started at 8 feet off the ground for that top step, after one move, it's about 12, 13 feet. After a second move, it's about 16 to 18 feet. After the third move, 20, 23 feet, somewhere thereabout, and so on and so forth, as high as I want to climb. Now, what if I want to go around a limb? Well, I'd get up to a limb, and when I go to move my tether, I would undo the screw link, put it over the limb, reattach it, and continue to move that tether up. And then once that tether is connected, put some weight in the tether, take the weight off the lineman's rope, unclip it, put it back on over top of the limb, and keep climbing. one thing you can do in general with this method is anytime you want to back down the tree a couple feet, it's really easy to do so. So I'll just put my weight into the tether here. And what I can do is just lower myself down a little bit. There's this little lever on the actual safeguard device. I hold the tag end in my right hand and just loosen that lever to drop me down a little bit. Once you take your hand off the lever, it's back on its braking system and you're not going to move. So I'll pop this out of the clip. Go ahead and tie a couple half hitches. While I'm hanging down here, I'll also hang my platform on. Now with this kind of a climbing stick, you don't necessarily need a platform. I know at least a couple of guys that have hunted off of sticks with really large bases like this and used them as kind of mini platforms for a significant portion of the season. And it's not my absolute favorite way to go. I like a little bit more foot room to be able to get around the tree and leverage off, especially if the tree is leaning a little bit. I don't feel like I'm going to swing around to the bottom side of the tree, but it is a viable option. And if you're going to do something like that and hunt off of just a stick, and maybe even throw like an over center buckle with a couple of steps around the backside, nobody's ever going to make fun of you saying you might as well bring a tree stand, because it's about as minimalist as an option, or one of them, as you can go. I like to hang my platform so that the platform itself is about level with the top of whatever climbing stick I'm using, so that I get additional foot room around the tree. So once I'm set up at hunting height, I don't have any concerns about this thing loosening up because I have that little piece of Night Eyes gear tie holding it in place. I'll go ahead and attach my gear strap. Once that's hung up, I'll go ahead and pull my bow up the tree. I'll hang my pack, and if I'm hunting with a camera arm, that camera arm is a little bit lower, I like to hang the pack off that camera arm base, just so that the pack's a little bit more out of the way. Up here it provides cover, but if you are filming, it gets in the way, obviously, of the camera. And there's typically not too many things that I still need to grab out of my pack. It's usually more there for being able to carry stuff in and out of the woods. A lot of my essentials will have right on my saddle. I'll add that recliner strap for comfort, pull my release out of my pocket, and now I'm basically ready to hunt. All right, now we've gotten to the fun part. You're ready to get down. I'll go ahead and put all my accessories away. So one thing a little bit different that I'm doing on the way down, and I haven't quite decided if this is the final way I'm going to continue to do this yet or not, but this will allow me to basically dual purpose this gear hoist. You could just carry a spare paracord, and this step is super important to remember. So you take your piece of paracord, or in this case the Stoyles gear hoist, and you put it around this rope just behind the knot on that quick link. So once that's locked in place, then I can go ahead and undo this Night Eyes gear tie, which again is going to be important. And now at this point, I can start my descent from the tree. So in order to do that, I grab the tag end of that rope, hold it just like it's shown on the directions on the safeguard, and I go ahead and take that lever, and this is my speed. If I cam this thing over more to the left, it's going to let rope out faster. And if I let go, it'll stop. So I'll just slowly bend it until rope starts coming out, and then I can just adjust my speed and go at whatever rate is comfortable. Once I get down to this point right here, I got all my platform and climbing stick accessories right here, and I can go ahead and just take those off the tree. And what I like to do here too is just, I'll give myself some separation from the tree with my feet, start that descent, and then just walk down. Also remember, before you start, take your 40 feet of excess rope, get that down out of the way. So then once you're down at the bottom, you can go ahead and take this off. Sometimes I find it easiest at this point too to just disconnect everything. Clip it onto something or put it in some kind of pouch so you don't forget about it or lose it. So now the only thing connected to the tree is that rope and the cordage that is tied just behind where that quick link is. Now, the reason that we use this is for rope retrieval. If you got a smooth tree, then a lot of times what you can honestly do is just put a little slack in this, just give it a little whip, and that'll loosen up that girth hitcher on that tree enough that the whole rope just falls down nice and easy. You can pack it back up, get out of the woods. But if you've got a knotty tree or limbs or anything like that, you're definitely gonna need this retrieval rope. So I'm just gonna take this cord on this Doyle's gear hoist and just start pulling. Once that rope is on the ground, then with that Doyle's gear hoist, that cordage just sucks right back in to that dump pouch. So there's no winding that thing up when you're ready to go home. And then to wind this rope up, I'll take the end that doesn't have the quick link and just start winding it up around my arm. And then with a little bit left over, I'll just take that excess rope, kind of fold it in half, just like that. Stick it back in that dump pouch. Then I'll go ahead and take this equipment, put it back on the rope. Again, just kind of a good mental check to ensure that you're not leaving anything in the woods. And then I will stuff that back in the top of the dump pouch. So that's the first thing right on the top when I'm ready to climb the next tree. Wind the climbing stick back up, then take that platform climbing stick, put it back in the load shelf in my pack, and I'm on my way out of the woods. So what's up with the quick link? Well, if you didn't have to ever go around any branches, then you'd be able to use a method like this. It's a little bit more standard. But because you got plus or minus 40 feet of rope, every time you'd have to go around a branch, if you wanted to undo this, you would have to feed that entire length of rope back through that loop to get it undone, and then back through to redo it again on the other side of that branch, which really isn't practical at all. And the only challenge with a carabiner is these things are designed to be very strong in tension. Force going this way, force going that way. But if you have a tree that is of a small enough size, you can see that there's pressure against that side of the carabiner. That's something that's called side loading. It's something that you're going to see recommended against in the user manuals of these carabiners, but they'll usually showcase a lot more extreme example where you have like a true 3-point bend against this. In reality, against a tree, you're not getting that extreme of a side load, but you are getting some depending on the tree. So you can see how in this tree right here, there's just a little bit of contact there, so there's probably a little bit of side loading. And if you had a much bigger tree, you might not even see that that carabiner contacts the tree at all. And then just to show you guys how this side loading is a function of the tree diameter, if we look at this much smaller tree here, you can see how if I load this rope, it is putting a much greater side load in the middle of that carabiner there. It's touching the gate, it's pushing right in the middle, creating kind of a 3-point bending type of scenario. So loading like this should absolutely be avoided at all costs. So with this quick link, it's made of steel, it's got a round cross section, and it's stronger in its main axes than the aluminum carabiner would be, and is a little bit shorter as well, so you're less likely to get actual contact there, less likely to have side load even become a factor at all. You can see on a tree of this size, if I have pressure out away from the tree, this carabiner actually isn't even really touching the tree right there. The geometry is a little bit better set up to handle that side load. Again, this is still a type of loading that you would want to try and avoid. Really want to try and avoid side loading as much as possible on these types of devices. Here are a few types of anchors that are more commonly used for rappelling off trees that are aimed at increasingly lower component forces. The challenge with anchors like these in this context would just be retrieval once on the ground. Another option, if you're concerned about side loading, would be to use a more standard tether to climb and hunt from, and then have a separate rappelling rope. For comparison, this rope and hardware setup weighs a little bit over 2 pounds. Without the quick link, you're still looking at about the equivalent of an extra climbing stick. I say all this not to add confusion, but simply give extra information. Eastern Woods Outdoors does have a couple rappelling kits designed for one sticking. Main differences are just that the kit includes a delta link instead of a quick link, which would help prevent cross-loading, which is a little bit different than side loading, if you didn't tie a cinching knot like I have onto it, and it includes an auto block, which is used as a backup. So one of the things I didn't like about the one stick method in the past was just how long it took me to get down out of the tree, especially if you had some kind of scenario where you wanted to get down fast, like let's say you spined a deer and you couldn't quite finagle another shot and you need to get down quick. That was not a good option for having just one stick. You had a one stick method all the way back down again. So the Rappel, for me, makes the one stick a lot more viable of an option than it used to be for me. So that's definitely an advantage for it. There's also an advantage in that, as you saw when I walked in here, I could just take that one stick, tuck it in the bottom of my load shelf, or strap it to the bottom of my pack, be able to put my bow on the back of the pack, and then have 2 free hands, which is nice. The one stick is obviously a lot lighter, and it's most likely going to be more compact than carrying multiple sticks, so that's a big plus for it. And in the case of this particular stick and other sticks that are like it, you can use that top step as a platform to be able to hunt off of if you want a more minimalist option. Now, even with the addition of rappelling, I still don't think I'm quite as efficient or as fast as when I use multiple sticks with aiders. I don't know if that's just because I've been using the multiple sticks for so long that I've just gotten so used to them and I'm just so quick at them. But I generally feel like there's less fiddle factor with multiple sticks still compared to the one stick. More so when you get those odd trees that got weird knots and splits and they're leaning 10 degrees in one direction. That's when I really feel like the multiple stick shines. However, there are still certain scenarios, like if I'm hunting in hill country and I want to be able to climb 30, 35 feet or something like that, where having a one stick method as an option could be a little bit more ideal. It's also going to be a little bit more advantageous if you got a long ways to go. If you're going in a legit 2+ miles, then you might start to lean more towards the single stick method than if you're going 800 yards from the truck. If you look at where we're at right now in the summer, I generally don't climb as high early season. So carrying 2 or 3 sticks, not that big of a deal. But yet, if you go on a hunt during November when the leaves are off and you legitimately need to climb up a lot higher to be able to find some semblance of cover, then once again, the one stick could be a good choice in that particular type of a opportunity. If I had to guess, I'd say maybe this year I'll be 80% multiple sticks and then go with the one stick method for those opportunities where it makes sense. There are certainly guys out there I think that are a lot more efficient at the one stick method. If you want more information and details and little tips and tricks and various modifications and styles of the one stick method, then definitely the Saddle Hunter forum is going to be the place to look. I'll have links to all the equipment that I used in the description down below. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll be sure to do my best to answer. Be safe, and thanks for watching.